Hello friends, and welcome to the Season 29, I think, recap video for Treaty United Building a Nation. Of course, the save that goes on over on Twitch, which of course we are live right now. Now, things might be a little bit different in today's, and not just the video, but also with the stream, because I haven't entirely decided whether we're actually going to be foregoing a transfer window stream and jumping straight into more stuff. Because our idea is basically, with only a limited number of streams left over the next week and a half or so, we need to get through as many seasons as physically possible. So expect these videos to also be a little bit shorter, because there'll just be less stuff to catch you up on. So we'll sort of be going over the main things, basically. So I do apologize for that, but I hope you can understand, because obviously with us going through more stuff more quickly, it does just require shorter stuff elsewhere, because there's just less things to catch you up on. But of course, if you do enjoy these, drop a like on the video. That'd be fantastic. And of course, if you want to watch the VODs in their fullarity, which is definitely a word, then of course the link to that is in the description to the second channel, where you could find all that good stuff. But as always, it's time to start with youth intakes. Yeah, things kind of went back to what we predicted, sadly. We were expecting 4 A-rated players this time. He was the best of the bunch. Bruno Adriatza, who is actually a Namibian goalkeeper. He's now Irish. When he came through, he was actually considered Namibian, which is a shame. That I've just stay Namibian, my friend. Come on, declare for them. It'd be great. You could be their national team keeper within about 2 seasons, I think. But there you go, because he was born in Windhoek. He's a local lad. But no, he is now going to be Irish. So there you go. Bruno Andriatza was the best player we got in our youth intake. To be fair, we can hardly blame Emmett for that much of that, given that he brought us through Manuel Jizzy last year. I think, honestly, if we don't get another good youth player over the next couple of seasons of the save, then really, I think he's done his job. That's the main thing. But now, on to the ins and outs. And this is an area that will obviously just be a lot shorter, because there just will be less ins and outs over this period. Mainly because we're so good. There's just less good players for us to get our hands on. And the other Irish sides are so stacked with talent from us that it's almost impossible to get new players to go out on loan to them at this point. So at this point, we're actually kind of just scaling back things and allowing them to do their own transfers a little bit more, with us just kind of keeping the same players there as things were. So we're less signing for other clubs at the moment and just trying to pinpoint a few players for us. But nevertheless, let's get cracking with some outs first, because there have been quite a few of those at least. The first of whom was Bogusław Sitkowski. £9.75 million went to CSKA Moscow for a guy that we didn't pay a huge amount for, and he had his little loan spell. But the problem was basically Bose decided that, their manager resigned and retired at the end of the last season, and it meant that they gave all their loan players back to us because they had no manager there to accept the new loans. And as a result, Bose have really suffered from that, much like what happened to Sligo several years ago now. Sitkowski was one of the players that suffered from that. I actually don't think he was, I think he was one of those guys, and we took the opportunity to make ourselves nearly £10 million by getting him out to CSKA Moscow, and I think it was good money. We just needed to keep getting that money in, and that's what we've been doing, believe me. Because after that, we sold Robert Poshbasil, another of the players. Now, he was actually one that came back from his loan again, from Derry, not because of anything other than he wanted to. And unfortunately, when Chelsea came in with a bid, we decided, you know what, now would be a good time to get some cash. So we sold him in the end for £39.5 million with, as far as I'm aware, a 50% of next sale fee clause in there as well. Like, he's fantastic, don't get me wrong. He is superb. But I just felt that maybe cashing in on him would allow us to investigate other areas of the team if he wasn't going to find another loan. So to take a £40 million, we made £30 million in profit on the transfer, and we've got a 50% sale fee. So we're going to get more money down the line for him too. So that's exciting, but it is a lot of money. One of our biggest sales ever, actually. And then in a similar vein was Luigi Ricci, who of course joined Dortmund from us. Again, he and Pospisil came back from Derry because reasons, and sadly refused to go back out on loan. He probably could have got in our team, honestly, but we had some of the other defenders that I kind of wanted to give those guys a chance. So we sold him to Dortmund for £22 million with a 50% of next sale fee clause. We're stacking those up as well. So I still think he's a fantastic player, and at this rate, it looks like we'd probably make another nearly 20 million on the back end if they were to sell him again. So that's good money for us. It would take us to close to 40 million for his transfer as well. And I don't think we paid a great deal for him either. So lots of money is coming in. I wish we could have kept them guys out on loan, but once they're back, they just weren't going to be going back out on loan at that point. I find that once the player makes that decision, it's not happening. Also, 20 jumping reach on Ricci. He's a very good player. Another of the guys that came back from the Bohemian loan spell was Dino Jedvaj, and again, he basically had to go for the same reasons because he's been out on loan at various sort of sides at various points. But yeah, £6.5 million to Galatasaray for him. I think again there's a 50% of next sale fee clause for him as well. We're stacking these up, as I said. But yeah, another load of money. We've got a lot of money at the moment, you might have guessed. Another player like that was Juan Mamani. His contract was up and Dundee decided to give us £5 million for him, so I decided to say yes, and he's now gone up to Scotland to play for Dundee United. And I should also point out that, for those of you who are unaware of the way we do this, at the end of every one of these series, we do a thing where we sim 50 years into the future from the point that we finish, and then we go through and have this awesome stream where we just look through all kinds of mad shit that's happened in the databases, as well as looking at all the former players, because we do all the keep history after retirement stuff on them. So that's really good fun. That'll be not till the middle of October once I'm back from my break, so obviously that'll be there too. But yes, Nikolai Dimitrov, we also sold him, which is a real shame, because again, it was one of these situations where, similar to this, where he was at Shamrock Rovers, didn't want to go back to them, came back to us, did actually play a few times for us, but then Inter decided to try to give us £33.5 million, and I said, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. So he's gone to Inter for £33.5 million, plus a 50% of next sale fee clause. And the thing that makes this one the best is that, well, we bought him for 45 grand and sold him for 33.5 million quid. I mean, absolute stonks on that transfer there too. Still weren't done though, as we sold Pablo Navarro, one of the wingbacks that we'd retrained. I think we got him extremely cheap, about £2 million from Boca Juniors. He now went to Galatasaray for £18 million. I don't believe he has a 50% clause or anything like that, but it's still loads of good money to keep bringing money through just to keep the club afloat, because unfortunately the finances have still been quite piss poor. Just because we're paying so many players wages now, we have had to be sort of selling a lot just to keep things up with that. The last of the sort of other outs was another of the guys that came back from Bose after a period of time there. He was there for 6 years, but again, same kind of problem. We sold him in the end to Hearts for £2.9 million, just to sort of get him off of the wage bill. The problem with a lot of those guys, when they come back after being out on loan for such a long time, it makes it almost impossible to get them a new loan because of their age a lot of the time, and Irish sides just don't seem to be interested. They're fine when you keep them out there for ages, but once they come back, they're almost impossible to get new loans for, unless they're sort of under 23, I find. So yeah, we cashed in on him as well. The only other kind of good piece of business I feel like was actually selling Orjan Forsgren to Sligo Rovers to give them a really good goalkeeper. We basically sold him to them for free, so he's gone as well. He cost us like £6.5 million quid, which is an absolute rip-off. But yeah, so he's gone out for permanent deal to Sligo. And now the ins, and there really is a few of them that have joined us and a couple that will join us in January. So there's not a lot to go through here. The first was Dalibor Voidovic for £3.1 million from Čukarički. Now you'll notice that he is on loan at Bose. That's because once they ticked over and had their new manager, then they were going to take loans, but they would only take players that they hadn't had before. So they did manage to get a few from us, but they weren't quite of the quality that they had before. But the first one they did get was Dalibor Voivovic from Čukarički, or from us via Čukarički. We also spent £2.7 million on Kevin Kroos. He was expected to be a 5-star talent, and he just wasn't. He just absolutely wasn't. He is wanted by someone, though, which is good news. Is he wanted by an Irish side? What? I mean, Chelsea are about to get fleeced by us. That's what it seems like. Next up was Jairo Lizarazo, which is just a wonderful name. Now, he, for me, was a much better piece of business. £1.6 million from Junior FC. Comes in, is worth 26 to 35 million. And he is just a little bit special, isn't he? I mean, he is really next level excellent as a wing-back. I think he could actually start to challenge and start to get some games soon. I mean, obviously, with Niaksu and Radojic, it's always tough, but he is genuinely phenomenal. Who's he wanted by? Derry City. Okay, that could be very good. Probably one of my favourite transfers ever. This is M. Pogpodinova. Obviously, that is not his real name. I believe his name is Emil... What is his name? Emil Gospodinov. So basically what happened with him was, this is a bit of a weird stream thing. Basically, I went to the bathroom and for something triggered on stream, and it meant that all my scenes went a bit weird and it just sat with an empty chair. So Pog then came in, my girlfriend, ran the stream for a little bit, and then chat basically convinced her to sign a player out of my scouting list. He wasn't even that good at the time, and then when we signed him up permanently, it turned out that he was actually really good and she'd bloody smashed it. So big up Pog for that. And yeah, £48,000 he cost. Just insanity that he cost £48,000 and is just coming and is worth that amount. One of the bargains of the century, honestly. Great player. And the final transfer that joined us this year, there's two more that I'm going to show you that join us in January as well. This is Nassim Yahi. Yeah, £55,000 he cost us from ASO Chief. We were very, very surprised that he would even talk to us, given our record with Algerian players, but he has joined us and suddenly is worth 20 odd million quid. And not only that, he's actually played 11 games for us this season. Was not my expectation when we brought him in that he'd ever start really matches for us, but he has managed to find a way to actually play some games in the league and actually score some goals. So very, very impressed with Yahi there. I think we'll strengthen in that area in the other window, but hey, it's just good to have him. He's a very strong player. Right, now the two new guys that will join us in January, I'm excited about them the most. Turns out actually there was three. So firstly, there's Andy Jr. I can't actually remember what his real name is at this point, and I'm almost too scared to check. But he's going to be joining us from Chelsea for £3.1 million. Just, I mean, when you see that and you can get him for 3.1, you have to, don't you? Then we dropped £8 million on Oscar Paredes from Club America, and I don't really think I need to explain why. He looks fantastic. 8 caps and 6 goals for Mexico already. I think that injury proneness does worry me, but the consistency is good. He's fast. He's got good trifecta. Composure can be improved with time. I think for £8 million, he's spectacularly good. Because at this point, we've got so many homegrown players that we actually don't need to care so much about just signing players that are 18 and under. We can actually target some slightly older players who are a bit better. Obviously, he's 19, but the guy I'm going to show you in a minute is the epitome of what I'm talking about. This is Jose Roberto, 27-year-old Brazilian international. We're signing him from Internacional in Brazil for £12.5 million, and he is just perfect. He is just perfect. With Thies Freeze retiring this season. There's nothing we can do about it, sadly. He chose to retire. I feel like Jose Roberto is the perfect replacement to play in that midfield alongside Trubovic and Ramos and the likes of those guys, and obviously Octavian Minaya too. He really will strengthen us, and to get him for that kind of price is just a miracle, honestly. And yeah, I'll explain how we signed him later, because there is a reason why we know about this guy, and it's kind of a weird backwards one, but we'll get to that in a bit. And that right there, honestly, completes the transfers in and out. And I feel like next year is actually going to be even lighter on this sort of stuff, because we might well be, the stream you might be going over to right now might actually be us doing Champions League knockouts instead of transfer streams specifically, because we want to make sure that we want to get as much progress in terms of years covered and stuff done before the end of FM23. And I feel like at this point, this is our best way of going about it, to be fair. And with that, we move our attention over to the league, which, as you'd expect, was fairly straightforward. Did actually lose the game in there to Derry City, as we always seem to. Derry City have beaten us more times, I think, than any other team in Ireland, weirdly, especially over the last, 15 years. They always seem to be the bogey team that just randomly beats us. But we did get the win. Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers, of course, qualify for the Champions League. You'll notice that looks a little bit different. We'll get to that in a minute. You'll also notice that Longford got themselves bloody relegated. They were smashing it at times this year. It looked really, really solid. Only ended up in the 9th spot on goal difference, and then managed to lose to Capantili in the playoff round. So they've officially had it, as you can see. But also, Dusan Abradovic for Dundalk, 32 goals. He's on loan from us. They finally started playing him as a striker, and he's just exploded for them this year with 32 in the league. Demiri as well, during his 14th season on loan at Dundalk, gets 18 assists, which is more than double what he's got in any other season. So what a guy. What a season for them. They do come second as per Shamrock Rovers sneaking into the Champions League. But having Derry City and Sligo in the Europa League is certainly not actually a bad thing for my money. And Bows in the Conference League, you can see just how much Bows have dropped off, having lost all those players. They only just scraped into that 6th spot this season, and it made a huge difference with them not having all those great loan players from us. I'm hoping they can rebuild a little bit, but it's going to be really, really difficult with them now after some of the weirdness of that. But hopefully we can get a few guys out to them over the Christmas period. But once they lose all their squad, it gets much harder to give them guys back again, because they don't want they don't want them a lot of the time, and 2, players won't go there because their squad is really poor now, because they've obviously lost all the players. It's much easier to build them up over time. As their squads get better, you can then send them new guys. Like, for example, Dundalk spending £30 million on a striker. That's the thing they did. That they bought a striker for £30 million. You'll love to see it, of course, but yeah. And finally, one other thing as well, Irish sides are finally starting to sign players that play in leagues that are not switched on, and those players have never played in any of the leagues that are switched on. And that for me is a good sign that finally the Irish club's scouting ranges have finally been upgraded to the point where they're actually now doing realistic signings. But it took way too long for that to happen. It's so slow for them to get to the point of actually signing realistically. Like the fact that you get clubs that are playing in the Champions League knockouts that still insist on signing Irish players from English sides all the time, because they've obviously got that set hard coded. It took way too long for them to stop doing that. And they still do it all the time, but they have finally started opening up a little bit. But there you go. And obviously we won all the domestic stuff, as you would imagine. So that's kind of a foregone conclusion at this point. Well, another thing you might notice is that once again we've hovered in 7th spot in the reputation chart. We cannot seem to grow above it no matter what our sides do, and that's really annoying because it's lagging so far behind our coefficient, and it's just a bit of a shame really, considering Germany were down at 5th at one point, had one good season, and it went, yeah, all right, go back to 3rd with you from one good season. But we have consistent good seasons over and over and over, and it's just like, no, you're still worse than Scotland. What can you do about it? So, Europe. This is where things take a bit of a turn. Let's just talk about our European campaign first off. Now, when we drew Ron in the Cup, we kind of knew it was going to be a fairly straightforward... In the Cup? The European Cup. The UEFA Champions League. It was going to be fairly straightforward, and that's exactly what it was. A 3-0 victory, Minaya and Christensen in the away leg. We knew that this was the best tie we possibly could have got, so we were very happy to take advantage of it. And in the second leg, it was much the same. 3-0 victory, 2 for Christensen, 1 for Trubovic from the spot. We probably could have had more over this time, but it didn't matter. We got ourselves through to the quarterfinals because in the last 3 years, we've had final and obviously won it, then 2 agonising semi-final defeats. This year, we just needed to just not for once. But as you're well aware, we're not really capable of doing that. Now, what I would say is Barcelona were comfortably the better side here. They scored 2 in 2 minutes, smashed us for a lot of this game. We got I say lucky. We deserved the goal that we got, but other than that, this could have been more. Lukacic getting us a very valuable goal to give us a chance in that second leg, really, but we were worried because that was poor from us. Thankfully, though, we finally got a little bit of fortune go away. I think we were still comfortably the best side in this game and deserved to win, but I feel like over the tie, it was very, very close, and I think 4-2 on the tie was a bit harsh, but Minaya, Valev, and Trubovic's goals give us a 3-0 victory and enough to send us to the Champions League semi-finals for, well, the 4th season in a row. Might even be 5 now. We've been so so consistent in getting to the latter stages now. And Swinetzky was really starting to pick up some good performances in goal, which is nice to see. He really is starting to become the starting keeper for us, despite us spending all that money on that other keeper. Swinetzky's finally decided to claim the role. And then things got even better for us in a way. It was a weird one. Nino Buch gave PSG the lead very, very early on before Trubovic and Manea gave us a 2-1 lead at the Parc des Princes. And I was thinking, yeah, we probably do deserve this. Unfortunately, Hector Munoz in the 94th minute got the equaliser for PSG, and I thought, oh no. Not this again, not like this. But I knew that we had the home leg coming up, and I felt like we were strong enough to get through that game. And what a game it was. We went behind in the first minute of the match. Christensen then equalised for us, and we found ourselves 2-1 down going into the 75th minute of this game. Thankfully, we were able to pull it back. We got a penalty. Thijs Fries, of course, scored. What a guy. And then Saki and Valev scored 2 more goals late in the game to make sure that we really put this over the line. A 6-4 victory, sending us to another Champions League final. But the fact that we were losing this with only 15 minutes to go was utterly maddening, but the lads really did dig deep. The penalty really helped, and then we just flew away with it after that, and we knew that at that point we were safe, home sailing into the final. This is where things get ridiculous, though, because we got to the final, and the final was against Benfica, who we were able to beat to win our second Champions League of the save. Now, this might look, it was a very, very close game. Honestly, could have gone either way in many places. Sal had to play, basically, we were missing 3 of our starting 11, players that I would want to start this match. So Christensen had an injury, which saw him miss out, and Bilbia had to start for him. Both of our midfielders were injured, so Trubovic was out injured. He got injured the day before the game, which was just spectacular news. And who was the other guy? Oh, Octavian Manea, of course. So those two would have started in the midfield. So we had to start with Thijs Fries, of course, and Mbaye Sow, of all people. And would you believe it was Sow who scored a header in the first half off of Niakchu, who had the best game of his, honestly, one of the best games of his career at left wing back in this game. He ran the show. He was man of the match, comfortably deserved. Brilliant performance from him. And he did a spectacular job of it as well. And of course, put it on plate for him. And then in the second half, Bilbia managed to grab a goal while he was playing terribly. We were just about to take him off. I decided to hang on to it for another 10 minutes. And then he went and scored the goal that put us 2-0 up and allowed us to win our our second Champions League. Very, very important win for us. But the fact that Benfica got to the final as well really, I think, helped us out a little bit. But we need to talk about how that happened, because this is where it's time to talk about other Irish sides now. Just quickly before we do that, we did obviously play in the Club World Cup as well, reached the final of the Club World Cup and hammered Barcelona 5-0, where they didn't even have a shot in the Club World Cup final. It was utterly mental. So we won everything this season. Everything there was to win, we managed to win. Champions League, Club World Cup, every domestic trophy. I think there was 8 trophies we won this season. Just a complete domination. Probably the crowning glory of us in terms of as a Treaty United side anyway. But yeah, other Irish sides now. So you'll see here, of course, in that first round, Dundalk, it was so frustrating. Dundalk were 2 goals down at home against Barcelona. They came back to win the first leg 3-2 and they got twatted at the Nou Camp. Very, very frustrating, because they should not have been in that position in the first place and they got a bit mugged off. Like, genuinely, I think they were very unfortunate to not win that first leg by more, but it is what it is. But then, as you can see as well, Sligo drew 2-2 with Bayern Munich. From being 2-0 up, ironically. They were 2-0 up at the Allianz, got it back to 2-2, Bayern did, and then, of course, in the second leg it was 0-0, but Sligo beat Bayern on penalties, and they now become the 3rd Irish side to reach a Champions League quarter-final in this save. Dundalk have done it once, Sligo have now done it as well, which is just incredible. Of course, their reward for getting to that round was to play against, I actually can't remember who it was. I think it might have even been Barcelona. No, tell a lie, it was Manchester City. And, well, as you can see, they beat Manchester City. They beat them on penalties as well. We were in raptures at this point that Sligo Rovers had knocked out both Bayern Munich and Manchester City and were in the Champions League semis. And since you know that we were in the Champions League semis and we didn't play them, you know that they'd have played Benfica in the semis. And we thought, them against Benfica, they may have a chance there. And it could have been an all-Irish final, except then this happened. Benfica beat them 9-2. And the worst thing about it, the worst thing is that they didn't, it was probably an even tie. They lost the first leg 6-0, despite the game being pretty much not dead even, but pretty close. It was just incredible. It probably could have been like a 2-1 defeat if I recall, and they lost 6-0. It was just incredible. So to lose 9-2 just made me kind of sad, honestly. But the fact that they got to the semi-finals of the Champions League, that never happened with any Norwegian sides on the last save, so fair play to them. It really wasn't very good, sadly, as they got terrible draws. Bows played Villarreal in their second knockout round, lost 4-2, and unfortunately Shamrock Rovers got hit for 6 by Juve in the second knockout round of the Europas, and that, of course, was us out of Europe. So a happy time, but it could have been, I would have just settled for, if we'd have somehow got a Sligo versus Treaty final, I think save completed that. But I don't think even feeling like number 1 would have been, I never expected an Irish side to do that well. honestly, and I don't think it's ever going to happen again, but the fact that it came so close was just incredible to see. But now, on to Irish sides this season, and of course us this season, most importantly. So we ended up in a group with Inter, Leipzig, and Marseille, and as you can see, we won the group fairly straightforwardly. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a cheeky defeat to Inter in there. I believe it was Inter, wasn't it? Yes, 3-1 defeat to Inter. Bit of an unfortunate one. Should have won, but it happens. Luckily, Inter were able to drop points elsewhere, so it wouldn't really matter all that much anyway. We sailed through fairly straightforward, as is often the case. I'll tell you about who we drew in a second, because Dundalk, yet again, have done it. Yet again. They've qualified out of their Champions League group, this time second in a group with PSG and Barcelona in it, but it features probably one of the most outrageous results I've ever seen. Do you remember when I showed you that Sligo, I believe it was, had won 4-1 at the Bernabeu, or it might have been Dundalk actually that won 4-1 at the Bernabeu? Yeah, this is going to trump that by considerable margins. You'll be like, okay, 2-0 win against PSG. Very, very good. Very, very good. Yeah. And then Dundalk 6, Barcelona 0. Dusan Obradovic scored 6 times against Barcelona in a single match. They're controlled by the AI. That is outrageous. Dundalk 6, Barcelona 0. And it was enough, obviously, with then to qualify them for the next round of the Champions League. Again, this is like the 5th time, I think, in this save they've got out of their group. What a result for them. And then in Group C, of course, Shamrock Rovers managed to do the business. They took a good draw against Bayern Munich. They threw away some points. They actually could have had an extra 4 points on the board and maybe had a chance at qualifying. They conceded 92nd and 93rd minute goals in 2 different games to throw away 4 points, but they also scored a 92nd minute winner against Zenit on the final day. I think it was 92nd minute. Oh, no, not final day. The day before. No, where was it? There it was. There you go, 91st minute winner against Zenit, and that was enough for them to come third. They'll be in the Europa League knockouts. But then probably the biggest surprise of all, Derry City, who got probably, for me, the hardest group of them all, actually got out of it with Dortmund and Ajax in that group. Dortmund, of course, who didn't score last time and managed to come third, this time did score and came third. Derry pulled off some miracles in this group. Genuinely astonishing stuff. Beating Dortmund firstly on the opening day was great. Got twatted by Liverpool, as you'd expect. Got a draw away at Ajax, then beat Ajax, then beat Dortmund away from home, and then obviously lost to Liverpool again. They lost both games against Liverpool and then took 10 points off the other 2. Just absolutely smashed it through to the next round for Derry City into the Champions League again. Crazy stuff. And this is how the draw shakes out. Of course, we play against Benfica, a repeat of the final from last year. Dundalk host Man United and Derry City host Juventus. Very, very tough draws for them. But you know what? We saw Sligo get to a Champions League semi-final last season, so if anyone could do it, you just never know. I just want the opportunity to see 2 Irish sides play each other in a knockout game. It's the dream. It can't happen in this round, but by golly, I just hope it does at some point in the next round. As for the Europa League, sadly, Bows did not do particularly well. They did get a result against Dundee United, Dundee away from home, and were they to have won at home against them on the final day, they would have actually qualified in third for the Conference League, but they buggered it up because they're rubbish. Luckily, though, Sligo Rovers were still knocking about, didn't actually have the best time of it, despite the fact that they were in the Champions League semis last year. They only managed to come second in their Europa League group behind PSV, which is a bit of a shock, but they did have quite a tough group, but they still managed to get some points on the board, and of course, through to the next round as well. Unfortunately, St. Pat's didn't even get to the group stages of the Conference League, so there's nothing to speak of there. So here's the situation. Of course, we have 2 sides in the Europa League knockouts too. Sadly, Shamrock Rovers drew Porto this time, which is not good. However, Sligo Rovers drawing against Dinamo Zagreb, for me, is a good chance for them to get through to the next round of the tournament, and I really do think that's going to give them a great opportunity to go quite deep potentially in the Conference League. I almost wanted them to come third, not the Conference League, the Europa League, just because I think they could have smashed it in the Conference League potentially, but we will just have to see. They've spent some good money. They signed Ilya Keating, of all people, from Rangers, so I don't know. I'm still excited though. Unfortunately though, ignoring that, so the problem was last year, we had a 15.1 season, which is one of the best. I think it's the second best ever. Obviously, losing this season coming up this year, of course, is going to be a problem. But unfortunately, Italy had a 21.83. And as a result, 21.083, one of the best seasons I've seen from a side outside of England. And as a result of that, of course, it meant we lost our top 4 spot, which is a real shame. You can see that at the start of this season, that dropped us down into 5th spot by a comfortable margin because of the sheer dominance of Italy that year, gaining 6 places on us. You can see that had we just matched each other, we'd have been all right, but yeah, it wasn't to be. They've just been stunningly good at the moment. And unfortunately, even in spite of everything that's gone well for us this year, because we haven't been group winners for Irish sides, they've all come second. Again, we're only on 10 points here, and you can see that it's actually worse than that, because at the moment, we're actually slipping behind both France and Scotland. Now, that's still very tight with Scotland at the very least, but it's poor. And the issue is quite simply that we weren't ready to have that 7th side. Now, what is going to happen, I suspect, over the next couple of seasons, though, once we lose those spots, the Irish sides are going to be disparated much lower down. And they're going to be really good quality sides in much lower tournaments. So I get the feeling that we've got the chance to have a potential couple of back-to-back, potentially, close to 20-point seasons ourselves. because I think the Irish sides thrown into Europa League and Conference League groups could absolutely clean up, honestly, get loads of points in the group stages and really start to smash things for us. So I don't think it's over yet, but I do think that our peak is going to be third spot, and I think we could get back to that before the end of the save, even with the huge gap to close up, but I still think it's going to be very, very difficult indeed, and that's a real shame. But there's just a few things that haven't really quite worked in this save, and we've talked about it to death, so I'm not going to reiterate it over and over again at this point. You know what needs to be fixed, and there's a lot of things we will be taking into account next year for MTK Budapest Building a Nation. A few little changes we're going to make beforehand to sort of prevent that stuff and just sort of make the save more fun overall, basically, and make it more realistic long term, and I think that's really what matters. And that's, of course, unless SI fix a lot of stuff and for FM23 and may not need to make any of these changes, but you know what, it's always important to just have your contingency plans in case that doesn't come off. So not going to run into too much detail about the squad on this particular one, but don't worry, I suspect you'll see a season 30 recap genuinely very, very soon indeed, because we might even be down to 2 to 3 streams per season at this point, meaning that of course you'll see these more regularly, so I'll try to be, but I want to try to keep these a bit more snappy for the next 2 just because of time and whatnot. But you can see this is the lineup we've predominantly been going with this year again. Christensen, Valid, there's very few changes. It's basically the exact same team that you would have seen last year. I don't think anyone really has come in and sort of established themselves in our squad for much of this season, other than maybe Yahi. I don't think anyone else has really done the job for us this season. What I will say is obviously next year it'll be different because we'll have the Mexican striker coming in, as well as, of course, our new central midfielder, Jose Roberto. So those guys you will see more of next year. And maybe that would be a good time to do a little sort of squad swap at that. Not squad swap, like a squad stat breakdown at that point. But in terms of stats, I think this is important to show you. Valev got 45 goals this season. Hasn't played, he still played a decent amount. A little bit down for him. Christensen at 38. Bilby at 25. Very, very strong for him. Trubovic at 20 goals and 20 assists is still astonishing. Thijs Fries in his final season of his career at 37 still gets 17 assists and 20 goals. The man has got, I believe, 37. He's got something he's nearly at 700 appearances for the club. He's going to be a legend. There's just no doubt about it. He is the legend. But I do believe, though, that Stefan Valev is capable of beating Emmett Doran's goal-scoring record by the end of this save. That's how close it's getting now. Because if you look at this at the moment, this hasn't taken into account the goals from this season yet, as you can tell. Or has it? I think it might have done, actually. Now that I think about it, yeah, it must have done. It must have updated. Let me just check. Yeah, it has. So 676 appearances for Thijs Fries. That has now updated. That's how many appearances he's going to finish with as a Treaty United player. He was 1 year away from a second testimonial. Also, 359 goals is genuinely astonishing for a player in midfield. Christensen as well, with 304 goals. That cannot be sniffed at. He's done very, very well as well. But Valev, he is, I reckon he has a good year this year and he overtakes Emmett. And in a shorter period of time, too. He's probably, he's only, 36 goals away from it? I think he gets Emmett's record this year, which is kind of mental that he could even do such a thing. But yeah, it looks like he's going to... I think he could actually get to 500, depending on how many streams we actually have left of FM22. But there you go. That's sort of how things are sort of shaping out with those guys currently. So yeah, what we're doing over on stream right now is quite possibly might actually genuinely be doing some Champions League knockouts. So a rarity from one of these. But I think it's going to help us move through the seasons a little bit quicker as we sort of... I think we've only maybe got like 6 more streams left of the actual save as it currently is. So it makes sense for us to just try to see as many seasons as we possibly can at this point, considering how happy we are with most of the squad. That's the kind of situation we're in. So, word of the day. What are we going for this time around? Let's go with, because I have a bottle of vape juice on my desk here, blackcurrant ice. Yeah, try and find a way to use that in a sentence and make it football related. Good luck, my friends. Also pop that in chat, and I will be looking forward to seeing you guys there too. That's going to be really, really fun indeed. So if you have enjoyed this, of course, hope you have, drop a like. That'd be lovely. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. That'd be good as well. Oh, actually, one thing before we do quickly go. Dev Center, 68 players out on loan. I do want to make sure I show you this at least. You can see that some of these guys genuinely are now 4-star rated. Daniel Antonio being one of them. Has a Brazil cap. Aaron Scholl is getting Germany caps. Look at the state of this player. £53 million and he's on loan at Shamrock Rovers. Incredible scenes. And I think the biggest goal scorer, I think, was Ubradovic. Yeah, 43 goals out on loan. Most assists was Fatima Demir with 20. Just incredible scenes. And the best average rating was actually Antonio, interestingly. Gunnar Skovli here, maybe playing for Shamrock now, but he's joining Sligo at the end of the season on a permanent transfer. So that's nice to see as well. But anyway, if you have enjoyed this, drop a like. That'd be lovely. If you're new to the channel, subscribe too. That'd be gorgeous. I'll stream on Twitch, as you already know. We've done all that. I'll see you guys over there. Remember, blackcurrant ice. I'll see you soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.